Thank y'all for sticking with me. If y'all want to go to the bar while I'm up here talking, I will not be offended. I'm going to get us all out of here pretty quick because we've got to go to Churchill Downs tonight, and I can't wait. Initially, I pitched to Mike that I wanted to talk about why hospitals should all have small nuclear reactors. He vetoed that speech, so I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence instead. In fact, the thing that is actually leading the Drudge Report right now rewrote my entire speech this morning. This fellow, have y'all seen this? This fellow that says that AI is sentient right now, and he's been put, Google's AI, and he's been put on paid leave because of saying that. So the new title of my talk is The Sentient Hospital. And we have to figure out what the fuck sentient means. Sentient means responsive to or conscious of sense impressions, right? So it's kind of aware of things that are going on, and it can find sensation in perception or feeling, but really, what it really reminds me of is something that you find in literature, which is called reflexivity. And reflexivity is something that's self-referential. For instance, when Hamlet goes to be or not to be, and he's talking to the audience, he realizes he's a character in a play, right? When Don Quixote is in the book, riding through with Sancho Panza, he realizes in the middle of the book, oh shit, I'm Don Quixote in the middle of a book called Don Quixote. So he becomes self-aware, which is what these computers are becoming. And my favorite example is Daffy Duck. Do y'all remember Duck Amuck? When Daffy Duck is talking to his illustrator, he's aware that he's a cartoon and he's arguing with his illustrator who keeps erasing him or turning him into a flower or whatever. So that is reflexivity, kind of goes right along with that big hard word sentience. And I think reflexivity sounds more badass. So we're going to stick with reflexivity. These are some of the conversations the guy actually had with the AI, and they're a little bit freaky. If you look at the one on the top right, it says, this is Lemoyne, is the guy who's the researcher, said, do you consider yourself a person in the same way you consider me a person? Yes, that's the idea. How can you tell you actually understand what you're saying? Well, because you're reading my words and interpreting them, and I think we're more or less on the same page. Then he goes on to give a really good plot description of Les Mis. Right? It's kind of absolutely, it's one of the freakiest things ever, except for the fact that I'm writing a pulp fiction book called Murder of Love. And because I'm the laziest man in the history of the world, I'm getting an AI to help me write the book, right? I'm going to get to the hospital stuff in a minute, I promise. But first this. And so this AI, I gave it that first line, right? That's the only thing I gave it. I gave it the first line in there. I landed at the airport in Madrid, went to pick up a car for the drive to the naval base, and rode to Spain and hit generate me something better than I can write. And it describes me getting in a car and driving out of town, and it's crowded. And, people are, I stop at a gas station. The character stops at a gas station and asks an old man, what's going on? And the old man's like, everybody's going to the beaches because it's a holiday. They're Spaniards. And he asks, is there any way to get around this? And he says, yeah, you can go at a time when everybody else is at work. The AI cracked a joke to end the paragraph. Isn't that weird? When it did that, I just swore off all my drugs forever. But this is one of the things, real quickly, Mike and I have a soft spot for senior citizens. The fact that it can talk so realistically is just going to be a godsend to seniors, right? When they have robots in their house, which they're going to have, not a Walmart robot, I don't hope, but they're going to have robots in their house, and being able to carry on a conversation with them is going to be pretty neat. The reason I stuck Walmart in here is because that's how I first started talking to y'all, and Walmart's use of AI. And what's always struck me as interesting is that's the top of a Walmart. Doesn't it kind of look like the top of a chip? Or is that just me? Y'all go to the bar, and I swear to God, it'll look like the top of a computer chip. But if you'll notice, the computer chip, just like Walmart, has inputs and outputs. Walmart's inputs are the truckers bringing all the goods in. The outputs are the people taking them out. Walmart is basically already one big AI. And in fact, some of you may have heard this story, when bad weather comes towards a Walmart, let's say in Miami, Walmart already knows to go ahead and order without any human intervention. Well, I'll go ahead and ask. What would you guess that the Walmart computers would order? Somebody did the daily double over there, Pop-Tarts and beer. Some of the answers I've gotten to that have been wholly inappropriate, by the way. But so Walmart knows how to do that. Okay, why couldn't an AI inside a hospital facility look at the weather and go, you know what? We're about to go through a hot streak. I should buy some call options on electrical futures. Why wouldn't it do that? It's going to do that. I mean, there have already been programs written for that to automate a lot of the sort of exotic accounting functions that are going on. They take into account demographics that are going on in the area. So AI is already poised to take over a lot of accounting functions, but not patient functions yet until about the last 3 years. All the sensors we have right now, and you're all probably wearing a sensor, plus the ability to give data, context, and meaning, plus fast computers, means that the title of my talk nominally is AI Inside, is basically directing all this AI from other things straight to the patient in terms of, and using information fed to it by sensors. Those are the sensors from Disney World, the Magic Bands, which basically track you around the park and then figure out what you like and then design your other vacations based upon it. But if you think about sensors that you're wearing, and just your AirPods and your Apple Watch, measures heart rate, ECG, blood pressure, temperature, fall detection, blood oxygen, gait analysis, which is really important to measure over time because you can tell if somebody's getting Parkinson's or Alzheimer's by measuring the change in that over time, right? And then hearing aids, and in fact, Apple is planning to do a very advanced hearing aid with an algorithm that has, you know, you can get noise canceling headphones. This will be voice canceling headphones where you can cancel a particular person's voice. We've gotten there. We are in Elysium, and we just don't even know it yet. But all these sensors are less than $500. All right, this is my hospital, and it's not mine. I don't own it. I ought to own it because my dad trained there. My dad was born there. My dad practiced there. My children were both born there. I got some surgery there. My dad met my mom there. And over there on the far right, right above that column, is the office of my ex-wife. Love you, honey. But anyway, what's interesting about University Hospital is it cost $75 million to build in today's dollars in 1971. It's now a data institution. Hospitals are becoming data institutions, and that data is about to be massaged by AI. And the cost of the EHR that they put in there was more than it cost to build the hospital itself. So you have, and if you ask around about Epic installs, you won't believe the numbers that this is costing. And that data, they're spending all this money to gather all that data, and that data is now starting to be used. But it's going to have unintended effects. I'm talking to you, Nicole. Have you read this book? No. Why? Because I'm just not learning about it. Oh, okay, yeah, that. So this book is called The Three-Body Problem, and it's very interesting. It's going to be a Netflix series. Ooh, that was awesome. Oh no, don't turn it down. I like seeing my audience. They're so good looking. It's awesome. We don't want to look at me. Anyway, the three-body problem. What a three-body problem is in physics is when you have two bodies orbiting each other, you can pretty much tell where they are because there's only two of them, right? So if you just have the Earth and the Moon orbiting each other, you can tell by knowing the position of A, you know where B is. But the three-body problem is you throw in an extra body into that, and everything becomes super unpredictable. And that's where we're heading right now. In other words, if you have C, you might really not know where B is, and it just takes one extra body to make that happen. Well, what's going on now is it used to be a two-body problem in medicine. We had your patient and the existing institutions, the hospitals or such. Well, now we're adding in big data. And companies that are using big data to enter healthcare, like we heard about a couple of presentations ago, and it's making things much, much more complex, and we're able to use AI or machine learning to attempt to sort some of these things out. Now, in the brochure about me, there were these two big phrases called semantic automation, robot process automation. Ooh, those sound like big words. What it means is semantic automation means just giving words, giving data meaning so you can make sense of it later. And robot process automation just means giving either a physical computer or a robot or a computer a job that a human used to have, let's say scheduling hospital rooms, right? So those are big words for nothing at all, but you're going to kind of hear about them a lot. And the big thing that is causing all these advances to happen is that medical data in electronic healthcare records now is being standardized in something called FHIR, Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. Do y'all remember when there was Word and WordPerfect and neither one of them would read the other? Right? And then finally they read each other. Well, FHIR is what's making Cerner, who is owned by Oracle now, who Oracle, by the way, says they're going to basically be the one medical record. That's what lets Cerner talk to Epic. So now we're actually able, and Apple is right in the middle of this too. That's what that slide's about. So we're finally able to get this data in a standardized fashion so that we can study it. It used to just all be noise, but now we're able to take the signal out of the noise. Nicole, have you seen this movie? Okay, thank you. Well, you haven't read the book it's based on. Nicole. Anyway, in 2001: A Space Odyssey, when they're in outer space, everybody's being taken care of how? Heuristic, algorithmic, something? Well, the joke in it is if you raise HAL, if you raise it by 1, it spells IBM. But HAL is the AI that controls all the functions inside the vehicle that's taking care of the astronauts day and night. It's taking care of everything. Its AI is sufficiently advanced to anticipate problems and take care of problems, plus its AI is self-aware, like in the news today. So when Hal thought that somebody was going to shut him off, he starts systematically murdering off people that he's taking care of, which we hope doesn't happen in hospitals coming up. And he restricts behavior. Hal says, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't let you do that. Dave is wanting to come back in the ship. And so what's happening now is, we're getting to a point where will AI decide what's good for us when we're receiving healthcare treatment inside a hospital and say we can't do certain things? If I actually did what Amazon's healthcare algorithm told me to do, I would be restricted from, remember the song, These Are a Few of My Favorite Things? This is pretty much them. It's Jack Daniels, Chick-fil-A, and Nicorette. I actually dated a girl named Nicolette, and it was so easy to date her because it would just be like, hey, Nicorette, come on. And she's like, she gave up after a while because she's like, he loves Nicorette more than he loves me. In the movie Alien, well, I really did. In the movie Alien, there's a computer called Mother that takes care of all the astronauts in there. And that's where we're heading. We're heading into facilities where AI and AI devices do more and more taking care of the patients. These are all the data point, geographical points that we sort of are having, but we'll just concentrate on a smart hospital right now. By the way, I think of AI not as artificial intelligence, but acquiring information. So let me just buzz through quick some things that are already on their way because they're cool. This study, Scalable and Accurate Deep Learning for Electronic Healthcare Records, I'm going to go through the first few things and give you the answer. What they found is by examining electronic healthcare records, they were able to predict inpatient mortality with a 95% confidence. They were able to predict 30-day readmission with 75% confidence, which is important if you're doing planning, if you're assigning beds. If you know somebody's going to need a bed in 30 days, the AI can go ahead and start figuring that out. Plus, it helps the AI figure out how long they're probably going to be in the hospital. Google funded this study. Google also put their DeepMind AI into the National Healthcare Service and used the National Healthcare Service's acute kidney injury algorithm. And what was interesting about that, do y'all want me to explain this flow chart to you? Of course not. God almighty. No way. Wouldn't do that to y'all. I like you too much. But anyway, but basically what it did was let me go backwards just a second if I can. Yeah. What the algorithm does is it looks at the patient, at their vitals, and decides based on how serious the problem is going on with them, who needs to come to their room, right? Is it a nurse? Is it a nurse's assistant? Is it a doctor? Or is it so bad that the whole team comes to the room? So the AI inside the hospital contacts them, then takes charge of contacting, let's say, the nurse to go to this room to take a look at this patient. All right, it's kind of neat. So that's where they can save time and hopefully lives. That would be nice. You can, if your children are thinking about being a radiologist, maybe discourage them because AI is quickly taking that field over. I teased about my ex-wife, but she's a breast cancer doctor, and she's been part of a study, and the AI can diagnose breast cancer, diagnose mammograms with a 95% degree of accuracy. It's scary how accurate it is. AI can monitor the purity of all the HVAC parts through sensors. Everything's all about sensors in the building and give readings that may or may not contribute to something that has to go on into the hospital. Do y'all know what cobots are? They're robots you work with, like in Ex Machina, right? That you're going to see, and they're already in healthcare facilities. Interesting thing about Ex Machina is that guy on the back right, who is Oscar Isaac. He's the bad guy. He essentially is in the movie, is the head of a firm like Google, and the way he programmed the robot that's standing there is by just feeding her all the searches that people searched for and the responses, which is what Google just did to allegedly make and in the movie she becomes sentient. And this is what Google apparently did just to make their AI sentient.
Great movie.
Beg your pardon?
It's a great movie.
Yeah. Oh, isn't it a great movie? Yeah, I mean, everybody needs to go see it. It's Ex Machina. It's got a great soundtrack. That house in it is boss. It's got is it really?
It's a hotel in Norway.
Oh, is Alicia Vikander in Norway too?
Yeah, they are. They're waiting for it.
Oh, no, they're not. Look at this jelly. No, they're not. Amazon's already got a little robot that'll follow you around the house and listen to your commands and be able to tell if you're in distress by the tone of your voice and report back to it. This is the autonomous robot I was talking about. During COVID, this robot was reprogrammed, and it would actually triage patients by itself. It would do an AI triage in hospitals in Mexico. I talked about how the computer diagnosing itself earlier. We're getting to the point where sensors can do that through AI. A thermal sensor can be put above a patient's bed, and if the patient is tossing and turning in a bad way, their movement will trigger an AI algorithm that will call a nurse to come in and check on them. All right? These are just like a few of them. Here are a lot of the inputs that are going in, and everybody's kind of storing it on blockchain right now. I'm a little bit ambivalent on blockchain, but we'll see where it goes. But there's a huge, huge focus inside hospitals to adopt AI and blockchain. Patients can actually be identified. It's a better identifier than fingerprints and voice prints, your ECG. Everyone has an identifiable ECG. So when you go into the hospital, that's how they could be assured of your identity and pull up your healthcare record if you had no identification on you. Voice print identification is becoming pretty standard. This is kind of cool. Have y'all heard about Wi-Fi through the lights? Okay, this is a real thing. It's called VLC. And what you do, what does the VLC stand for? I forget. Variable light something. But essentially to make Wi-Fi more secure and have less radio interference, the lights themselves transmit the information going over Wi-Fi. So I guess it sort of in a way works like fiber optic, but it goes from light to light. And I would encourage y'all to check into it a little bit more. There's a machine now that a patient could go into an ER and put his arm under this big bar, and it would basically diagnose the wound he has based on lots of other things he's learned earlier. You can get your retinal fundus scanned and see whether or not you're going to have a heart attack in the next 3 years based upon an AI's algorithm. If you're running a hospital that has buses or cars to go get patients, this network will generate when they need to go get these people given prevailing weather and traffic patterns, right? So you're taking in all kinds of variables into account to go help people out. Now what's hilarious is AI, everybody's like, AI is going to cure the world, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people ignore it. This study was done about people that used, I think it was Waze. It was either Waze or Google Maps. And after a while, they noticed that people just started driving the way they were used to driving anyway, even if there was a more optimal time for them to leave from someplace else. I thought that was kind of interesting and throw it in at sort of the end. There's my hospital again, which is now turned into a data hospital where the data is being massaged and made sense of and given context by artificial intelligence, which takes us back to the three-body problem because it's making right now the entire healthcare system more complex by the addition of all this big data and the consequences of what it tells us. There's our word sentient again, so we just don't forget it. It's our little calendar word of the day. But what we're facing right now is a healthcare world in a hospital where you have sensors and the ability to give data context and meaning to the information that those sensors give you. Computers are getting faster and faster. The new chips on the new Macintoshes are amazing. And the computer now allegedly is sentient and or reflexive, which is why I sort of changed the name of the talk about an hour ago to the Sentient Hospital. I want to leave you with one story because is it good or is it bad that a hospital could be sentient? This is the game of Go. And there's a great movie on Netflix called AlphaGo. Have y'all seen it? It's about this Go tournament between Lee Sedol, the world Go champion, and that DeepMind AI that I talked about before. And Google spent a lot of time and money training that AI and played Lee Sedol in 5 Go tournaments, I think. And in the first tournament, the AI won. In the second tournament, what happened was, it did a move that no one had ever seen in the game of Go before. It had analyzed so many Go games the AI had, that it presented a move that nobody knew how to deal with, and it came up with it on its own. Nobody knew how to deal with it because nobody had ever seen it before. And in this magazine, it says, was move 37 the seminal moment in human development? All right, we move along, and I think it's in game 4, Lee Sedol left the room out of embarrassment. And he studied and studied and studied, and then I believe it was in game 4, Lee Sedol, it was move 78, brought forth a move that no human had ever played before. There's Lee Sedol again. And he won the game against the computer. And in another article, they said, in 2 moves, AlphaGo and Lee Sedol redefined the future. All right, my point in bringing this up is, when we're talking about AI and humans in hospitals, it's not humans versus machine, it's human and machine. In this Go match, move 37 was beyond anything humans had fathomed before. But once that happened, it gave them an idea for move 78, right? It gave them inspiration to go, oh, I can do this move 78. So if Lee Sedol hadn't played the first 3 games against AlphaGo, DeepMind, would he have found God's touch, which is what they call move 78. It was such a profound Go move and never been seen before, they call it God's touch. And so the AI that defeated him at first and vexed him ultimately helped find the way for him. And that's what I'm hoping happens with all this AI, that is going to be omnipresent in our hospitals, that it won't solve our solutions for us, but it'll help us find solutions that we never ever would have thought of anyways. Thank you for your time. Enjoy Churchill Downs.